Okay, let's begin.
Good morning, Patriot listeners. This is Political Pitchforks with Jeremy Munson and Susan Sjogren-Smith, and we have some special guests in studio today to talk about the Minnesota gubernatorial election and all the candidates that are running on the Republican side. We're nearing a baker's dozen. We might have that by the end of this year. We want to talk about the race, the candidates, how it impacts Minnesota's politics in the legislature next session, because we have some people in leadership, and then also get into kind of the nuances of how it's going to impact the overall 2026 election for down ballot races. So in studio, we have Dave Osmek, former president of the Minnesota Senate, who is a man with the grumpiest Wikipedia picture I've ever seen. I don't know who put that out there, but boy, does he look grumpy. And he was a Minnesota state senator for 10 years and we also have with us Cara Schulz, who is a Burnsville city councilman, I believe, and former political director of the Libertarian Party of Minnesota and political strategist for the National Libertarian Party. And these two people we brought in today because I believe they represent kind of a wide spectrum of conservative beliefs in our state. And if we're going to win statewide, we need to have the Dave Osmeks and the Cara Schultzes on board with our candidates. So guests, thank you very much for joining us today. And I want to quickly do a disclaimer because, Dave, you're working with one of the candidates running for governor. You want to just talk about your role?
Good morning, conservative infidels. I will state upfront and very clearly. So all of you candidates who are running, these are my opinions. I am not appearing on behalf or in support of any political candidate whatsoever. These are my observations, and my cred goes back. This isn't like I'm some guy that just fell off the turnip truck yesterday. I started in politics in 1984 at Moorhead State doing the Reagan re-election campaign, which we should have won Minnesota, but Reagan was magnanimous and very humble and let Mondale keep Minnesota for himself because if they did the recount, he would have lost Minnesota. But I've served on a city council for a long time. I was a BPOU in the BPOU leadership in my Senate district, and then assumed the lowly position of a senator and eventually state Senate president. And if you're looking for someone who's establishment, if you look at my record, you look at what I've done, I am really, and I know there's people rolling their eyes right now, I am really not establishment. I have knives in my back from Dave Hand that still have his fingerprints on it. And as I said before we started, those fingerprints are very deep and stay there a long time. I did what I needed to do for the party to make sure that we had somebody running conventions that knew what in the heck they were doing. That's where I come from, is that I believe that we should have conventions that are efficient and get the job done, not be run as a zoo format. But that's a long explanation to say I've been around a long time, over 30, 35, 40 years, and I am appearing on my own whatsoever. And if any candidate doesn't like it, they can certainly call me and tell me where to go. And they may.
They may. And in there, I didn't know if I heard it, but you are advising the Kendall Qualls campaign, just so that listeners know who you've endorsed or supported. And then, Cara, give us a little bit on your background that I didn't touch on and how you're involved in Minnesota politics.
Sure. I mean, yes, I'm an elected official, but like Dave, I am not here in my official elected position capacity. But sometimes people get the idea, you're in the Libertarian Party, very inconsequential. That is not accurate. When I did political strategy for the National Party, I raised our candidates' win rate to a 37%, and that was for partisan and nonpartisan races. So I am used to looking at campaigns and finding those small areas of persuadables and then persuading them that the policy solutions by the candidate are the best, and also that the candidate is a decent, thoughtful person and you can feel good voting for them. So I'm used to winning elections that we keep getting told are not winnable. And, there are strategies to do that. Oftentimes, the two major parties do not take advantage of those strategies because they count on the fact that they have this infrastructure. However, the infrastructure generally does not do jack crap for their candidates. Mm-hmm. So if Republicans wish, and I'm not saying I want Republicans to win elections, because I would like for both major parties to go die in a fire. But if I'm advising candidates, which I do, and I do work with R&D candidates, there are pathways to victory. You need to find those pathways to victory.
I think your points are excellent. I want to say, Dave, people know, I mean, you and I've gone toe to toe, and in the end, you've been fair. We don't agree, and I've challenged your. It's been a great fight when we've had them in the past at the conventions, and I think that's what we have to teach people. We have to teach people how to engage in the process, so that they can impact the process in an effective way. And I think you're right. I think that both the parties are struggling right now to find that way, because they're all caught up in the money game and not about the truth game and about what the issues are and what matters to people.
That, and there's a major realignment going on in both major parties. Both major parties are doing this really big realignment, and voters' heads are kind of spinning at the moment. They're very confused. You can take advantage of that confusion, though. Yeah. Confusion means it's a jump ball. Right. So, look for your pathway to victory.
Exactly. Great point.
Well, I have thought that our path to the majority in Minnesota around the suburbs, where we always target, lies more in running libertarian candidates, people who are for limited government, less government, more freedom, more liberty, more individual choice, and not to jump into all the social issues that are so divisive. And yes. I really think that's a strategy. Out in the rural areas, a libertarian might be all about just slash and burn limited government, and that sells too. But in the metro, I think when I talk, and I come from a big Democrat family, all the people and relatives are all Democrats, and the things that we agree on, I think a lot of them are more libertarian leaning than being, especially today's DFL party or Democrat party.
Well, and I've always told conservatives, and I've advised, even my Senate colleagues in my caucus, that the best Republican will have a libertarian bent to them. Some people dismiss me when I say that, but there are parts of being small L libertarian that actually keep you on the straight and narrow, as opposed to just being a hardcore demagogic type of Republican that just follows all of the conservative orthodoxy down a rabbit hole no matter what. So, right. I mean, that's the truth of the matter when you get to the legislature. You need to have both of those working together, and that's not to say I'm endorsing anything within the Libertarian Party, but there are aspects that actually work well for governance if you take the right ones.
The pathway forward is, if you're talking about suburbs, so the pathway in the suburbs has to be through women.
Absolutely.
So that is the area that the GOP lost. And I can tell you the moment they lost suburban Republican-leaning women and independents. And that was when Minnesota tried to push through that Marriage Act, which limited marriage to one man, one woman. I helped man the phones, and I helped organize the pushback against that. And it was Republican women, church-going Republican women, who manned the phones to call their fellow church members to tell them to oppose that constitutional amendment. And that is the exact moment the GOP lost suburban women. Republican women, soft R-leaning women and independents. So you're right when you're talking about these social issues are just And the other thing is, we used to always say all politics are local. No, all politics now are national. And today we have the Supreme Court looking at removing Obergefell. And if that happens, you want to talk about some crap rolling downhill in this election for the GOP governor, it is on.
Well, we'll talk about this issue and more when we return from this break. You're listening to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, Patriot listeners. You're listening to Political Pitchforks. I'm your host or co-host, Jeremy Munson, former state legislator with Susan Sjogren Smith. And in studio today are Dave Osmek and Cara Schulz, great politicos in the state. And we're talking about the gubernatorial race and specifically where there was a big shift against Republicans and where it started. Cara, you were talking about the suburbs and how the path to victory lies through the woman vote. And Dave, what's your response to this, and where do you see this? Where did you see the shift?
I would say that there is some truth to what she said. Not completely 100%, but there's a certain amount of it because that started the process. Mm-hmm. Because if you remember, after 2012, then we went to 2014. And in 2014, the House flipped from Democrat to Republican. And that wouldn't have happened if, and a lot of them were suburbs, like suburb areas such as Jennifer Loon's district. That was still Republican. Let's see, I can name a few other ones that are within the suburban sphere that were still pretty solidly red. 16 came along. Eric Paulson won again. I ran up my highest numbers in my suburban, exurban district. It's sort of split half and half. There's some farmland in Hennepin County that hasn't been paved over yet, but they're working on it every day. But as you move forward into 18, then the shift started, and I think it was because of the abortion issue became hotter and hotter, which then created the split with more of the suburban women's. Hence, you have Phillips. And now Kelly Morrison, who is the biggest abject failure of an individual as a U.S. representative I've ever seen.
Dr. Death.
How do you vote for a woman who delivers babies and wants to have abortion up until the last second of pregnancy? I don't get that one. How do you do that? But I digress.
She also drafted the euthanasia bill.
Yeah, she you're right.
She's a doctor who kills. Dr. Kevorkian.
Mrs. Kevorkian.
So let's talk about the candidates that are out there. We have a lot of candidates running on the Republican side for the nomination. Most of them have said they're going to go to primary and not abide by the endorsement. But Lisa Damuth,
they all do anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't care what they say. If they lose, they're going to the primary.
Well,
right. Lisa Damuth is the current Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives. She's up from, I think, Cold Spring or somewhere up by St. Cloud. Scott Jensen, who ran last time, he was our nominee last time, and basically after his loss said that that we need to have pro-choice candidates to run on the Republican side, and he blames abortion for the reason why he lost. Jeff Johnson is not the former gubernatorial candidate Jeff Johnson, but a former, believe was a former city council member from St. Cloud. He's running. Patrick Knight is the one that jumped in this week. He's a snack company CEO, former Cargill executive, Harvard MBA. And Brad Kohler is running. He's a mixed martial arts or MMA fighter. Phil Parrish is a teacher. He's run for statewide office before. And Kendall Qualls, who was also ran for governor last cycle and nearly got the endorsement at the convention. And he is running, and he runs a nonprofit for education. And Kristen Robbins is the state representative, and she's the chair of the fraud committee in the House. She's also a candidate. Mike Lindell is kicking around the idea of running. I've heard rumors of Walter Hudson jumping in, but that's kind of the field as it is now. Cara, I'm going to ask you, of all those candidates, do you think any of those have the chance of winning statewide?
None of them have a path to victory. None of these candidates that I've seen so far have a path to victory. I mean, when you have one of the candidates having as one of their slogans that they're running on Jesus Christ, that is not a path to victory. Like that's not a path to victory.
Yeah, which candidate is
Parrish?
Yeah. So Fair. Yeah, and and you have perennial candidates. You have candidates that have proven that they can't win because they've run and haven't won. You have candidates. Look, when you have candidates that are running on issues and they're not able to have a coherent philosophy. They pick and choose. And I will pop up the abortion issue. Okay. So you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this is, the abortion issue. You have other issues like that. Okay. If you are looking at this from a medical freedom perspective, you can now bring in both the right, you can bring in the center, and you can bring in the soft left, and you can bring in independence. Now you have a unified philosophy on how to treat these issues in a way that is consistent, because people can sense inconsistency, even if they like you on a particular issue. And voters don't like the inconsistency that a lot of candidates have. Also, when you're looking at what is the path forward, and we were talking about suburban women, it's not just particular issues. Women are more apt to cross party lines on a vote. Women are more apt to change their mind based on new information to vote. So those are your persuadables. And I know we're kind of harping on women, but like when we're looking at Minnesota, this truly is a path to victory, right? That's your focus. And you can get these women down into smaller buckets. None of these people can attract the women and do it in the smaller buckets because, for one thing, a lot of their presentation is very off-putting. Women who are willing to cross the party line or independents or swing voters, and those are very different buckets. Those are not the same thing. They're looking for someone who is not abrasive and not mean or, if you want to say cruelty or that type of thing in their speech. You don't have to be squishy. You don't have to be warm and fuzzy. But you do have to come across like you are a human being and you give a crap about other human beings. Show me a candidate on this list that does that.
Well, what
Who gives that
about the two female candidates that are running, and Lisa Dameth and Kristen Robbins? Do you think that they appeal to suburban voters, to suburban women voters? And if not, why not?
No, and in fact, women have an even more difficult time with that because they have to be seen as caring, but they can't be seen as wishy-washy. And that's harder for women to carry that balance than it is for a male. It's easier for a male.
I think women are harder on women.
They are.
They're just harder on women. No question about it.
Yes.
Well, I'll break in here. So who's your unicorn? Because what you've just described is a unicorn. What is the name of the unicorn you want to run?
Most of those people would not run because it's such a vile, disgusting process. And that's one of the challenges that you face is like if you're a decent human being. But you're asking me.
You're stuck with the list.
I'm not stuck with this list.
Okay, but you're not.
I'm not voting for any of these people.
Okay, then you want Tim Walz.
I'm not voting for him.
You're going to, by not voting for a candidate that is a viable candidate against Tim Walz, you're reelecting Tim Walz.
Okay, so
just be pragmatic about the situation. That's what you're saying.
Sometimes when dogs eat something bad, they feel icky and they puke. And then they look at that puke and they go, maybe that wasn't so bad. I'll eat it again. And so they eat it again and they feel icky and they puke again. Like, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. And you can't make me. And guess what? You can't make independent voters do that. And if you do not offer voters better choices, they will not take those choices.
And
they will go with the devil.
And you
they
can't
will go with the devil that they know.
And you can't name one. Here's the problem.
I don't have to name one. It's not my party.
Can I talk for just a second here?
No.
See, that's the problem with libertarians. You are always looking for the purest libertarians, such as yourself. I consider people that are always looking for a unicorn.
No,
you have to look for. That's what you're saying. Every one of these, you're saying none of these people have in any of the assets that you would suggest as electable. And the truth of the matter is, you are going to be presented with this list. I ran for governor once upon a time for 6 months. I walked away from it for a number of good reasons. I thought I was the best candidate. But you know what? I bowed out because I didn't have the financial resources. And guess what? That's part of the game.
Yes.
Part of the game is getting people to give you money voluntarily.
That's a big part.
But when you're looking for you have to pick something from column A to be the one you're going to support. And I'm fine if you don't want to pick one right now, but sooner or later you're going to have to, because otherwise you're not being pragmatic about the situation. You're going to run somebody who's going to steal off a percentage or two that is needed by a candidate that is viable and may not be perfect in your world, but at least it's 70%. Ronald Reagan even said, I hate to keep bringing up St. Ronald of Reagan, that he said, if you agree with me, and I agree with libertarians, a significant portion of the time, I won't say 80% of the time, but Reagan said, if you agree with me 80% of the time, you're a friend, you're not a foe. We're never going to agree upon perfect. Every one of the candidates I look at, there's something that's wrong with them, and we'll point out a few of them, but you have to pick something from there. Otherwise, you're putting Tim Walz back in.
No, that's not reality.
But
See,
hold on.
You're not talking about reality. You're talking about, no, you have to pick one. This is the pool I'm going to give you, and you must pick one from them. And what I'm telling you is voters will not do that on a path to victory for the GOP to get the governor nomination with this pool.
Well,
It could happen, but it's not.
I'm going to differ. I think that we have candidates who could be viable, but I think that there needs to be some work done on both the presentation. I think what you're talking about is critical, and I think too often we have the coaching of candidates that takes them not to the place where they are humanized to people,
Yes.
whether people like Donald Trump or not. Having known people from New York for decades, you know what they would say? People love him because when he could sit down with a guy at a barbecue, he can go to a baseball game, he can be at a business meeting. He appeals to everybody because he's friendly. You know, whether you like him or not, there are people who vote for him who don't. So I'm just going
That
to say
McDonald's thing that he did was genius.
genius. Wearing the construction thing, genius.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is we have candidates that are viable, but I think we've got some work to do to help them show, I think, actually who they really are, not
That's
who they've
part
been
of the
formed
process
into.
we're in right now.
Right.
That's part of this process.
We'll be right back. Thanks for listening.
Okay, let's begin.
Welcome back, Patriots. You're listening to Political Pitchforks on AM 1280 The Patriot with Susan Sjogren-Smith, myself, Jeremy Munson, and we've got two great guests today that are having a heated debate about the Minnesota gubernatorial election. Dave Osmek and Cara Schulz, both longtime politicos in Minnesota and elected officials. We want to jump in and talk about some of the candidates. I want to talk about Lisa Damuth, first of all. I served with her in the Minnesota House. She came in shortly after I was elected. She's currently Speaker. One of the concerns I have about her running for governor is that she is not stepping down as Speaker. I know she told the caucus that it was because of the power sharing agreement that's in place because of the split 67-67 House. However, the Democrats are actually down 2 seats because one just won a special election. And the other one, I think did they both win? Yeah, they both won. One became the mayor of St. Paul, and the other one was elected in a special election to fill a vacant Senate seat for the cat burglar senator. And so that it should violate the power sharing agreement anyways, and they need to renegotiate that. If she steps down as Speaker, they would have to elect a new Speaker and have to come up with some kind of an agreement again. But having the leader of the Republican House caucus also campaigning for statewide election where her goal is to win over hundreds of thousands of people that voted for Tim Walz, it means as a conservative, the caucus isn't going to be advancing my principles of our party. And that's my concern. And I think that I know that she's made some changes and is having the majority leader, Harry Niska, take over the HRCC, which I believe she has to do anyways. But it's a little concerning she's not stepping down as Speaker. She also holds the ability to take away gavels from her members as Speaker. And so I think you'll see a lot of House members endorsing her campaign as a result. Dave, what's your kind of take on how Lisa running for governor is going to impact the legislative session here?
Well, let's put out the disclaimer again. I am appearing on this show on my behalf. I am not in support of any candidate or candidate's committee. So let's start with the last part. When you bite the hand of the Speaker, and this probably is something where your other guest and I will both agree, when you bite the hand of your speaker, there is retribution. I was on the receiving end of this bad boy, because after the 2020 election, I was not going to be supporting Jeremy Miller to be president. He violated what he ran on to become president. I announced that to Paul Gazelka. It took about 3 weeks before he stripped me of my gavel. That legitimately happened, folks. It was retribution, political retribution, because at that point in time, Gazelka was already running for governor. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew what was happening. Everybody in the caucus knew what was happening. He was still reelected leader. And here's the worst part. When you are leader, and I don't care what Demuth has to say, she is still leader of that caucus. This is the most politically, and I'm getting angry now, this is the most politically self-serving, selfish thing I have ever seen in Minnesota politics, and I've seen a lot. Because she is putting herself ahead of her caucus. They are split 67-6 theoretically,